Доброго дня, вечера. Добро пожаловать в новое видео, в новый эфир на тему iOS разработки. Сегодня продолжаю учить, повторять курс по SwiftUI, называется 100 дней SwiftUI. Перед тем, как мы начнем, в чат летит ссылка. На мои ресурсы. Также она будет в описании под роликом на YouTube. Курс 100 дней SwiftUI. В прошлый раз был день 49. Начали новый проект по поводу работы с данными, загрузка их из интернета, декодирование JSON, проверка и отключение формы. В этот раз день 50, это продолжение этого проекта. Поехали. Сегодня мы будем изучать еще две техники перед погружением в построение пользовательского интерфейса нашего приложения. Хотя fundamentals of today's work, хотя основы сегодняшней работы будут вам знакомы, все еще есть ряд новых вещей, как вы видите. This will become particularly common as we continue to push SwiftUI's boundaries. Everything is easy. But as we venture more into larger apps, you'll find we need to spend more time getting the details right. But that's okay, as American tire magnate Harvey Firestone once said, success is the sum of details. Успех — это сумма деталей. Успех в мелочах. I hope you can look at Apple's iOS apps and be inspired by them. Their UI is often uncomplicated, but they put a ton of work into getting the details right, so the whole experience feels great. When the user launches your app on their $1,000 iPhone, it takes up the full screen. You owe it to them and to yourself to make sure you've done your best to get things working as smoothly as possible. If Apple can do it, so can we. Сегодня три темы. Мы изучим про haptic effects. Это, кстати, новое. В прошлом этого не было. Encoding observable classes and more. По-моему, это новое.
If all the properties of a type already conform to Codable, then a type itself can conform to Codable with no extra work. Swift will synthesize all the code required to archive and unarchive our type as needed. However, things are a little bit trickier when working with classes that are using the Observable macro because of the way it rewrites our code behind the scenes. To see this problem in action, let's write a simple observable class here that has a single property called name. I'll say @observable class user conforms to Codable and has a single property called name with a default value of Taylor. Just to make our life easier. And now you can write a little bit of SwiftUI code down here that encodes an instance of that class when a button's pressed and just prints out the resulting text. So I'll say we have a button saying encode Taylor with an action being encode Taylor. And that method's going to be func encode Taylor. We'll make a data instance using try JSON encoder dot encode a new user. Obviously, you wouldn't write this kind of code in production. You wouldn't use try and similar, but it's just testing purposes. That's all it is. Once that's done, I'll make a new string by decoding that thing straight away so we can read the contents easily. I'll say string decoding that data as utf8.self and simply print out that string. So we can see what the thing actually looks like in JSON form. I'll choose iPhone 15 Pro, press Command R, and run the code back. So again, simple observable class here with one property, a button to encode an instance of it straight away, and the data, encoding it and just printing out the JSON we get back. Let's press the button. Boom. So what you'll see might be unexpected. We're seeing name Taylor's here, but it's underscore name rather than name. And we have this observation registrar along for the ride too. What's happening here, if you remember, is that the observable macro, this thing here, is quietly rewriting our class so it can be monitored by SwiftUI. And here, that rewrite's kind of leaking. You're seeing the internals here, which might cause all sorts of problems. If you're sending JSON data to a server, for example, and expect to receive name without the underscore, it might have no idea to look for the underscore version and use that instead. To fix this, we're going to tell Swift exactly how it should encode and decode the data in the class here. This is done by nesting an enum inside the class with an exact name called coding keys. This thing needs a raw value of strings plus a conformance with a different protocol called coding key. And yes, that's confusing. Enum must be called coding keys and the protocol is coding key, but it does matter. Inside the enum, you make one case for every property you want to save. Maybe one, maybe all of them, it's down to you. You then use the raw value of the enum case to say what name that should have in your JSON. So we'd say just name as a string, not underscore name, to rename the thing across. And so for example, in here we might say there's an enum called coding keys with a raw value string and a coding key conformance. And I'll say when you see underscore name, when you plan to write the underscore name value out, I can see it's doing right here, don't do that. Use the name. No underscore here. So when you see this value, reading or writing it, actually make it this value instead. So let's press Command R and give it a try. I'll press encode Taylor again. And boom, we get what we expect in the first place. Just name Taylor. So no more underscore, no more observation registrar along for the ride. And this key mapping works both ways. So that if we receive some JSON in the future, and it's just called name like this, internally Swift will say, aha, that's remapped to my underscore name rewritten variable behind the scenes.
Так, понятно. Мы добавили Codable conformance к классу с macro Observable. Здесь говорится о том, что macro Observable внутренне перезаписывает значения в параметрах класса. И иногда это может привести к ошибке, потому что он будет выводить внутренние представления перезаписанные. Если это чтобы этого избежать, нам нужно добавить ключи кодирования, coding keys, где писать, какие переменные, каким ключом должны копироваться. Окей, следующая тема. Сейчас, но сначала мне нужно, как говорит полулитровая мышь, но сначала мне нужно выпить. Так, я не понял, почему у меня не отображается Xcode. Файл открыть. Recent. Угу. Видео, добавление тактильного эффекта, haptic effects. Вроде бы так. Ну да, вибрации, все такое.
SwiftUI has built-in support for haptic effects, which use Apple's Taptic engine to make the iPhone vibrate in various interesting ways. Now in iOS, we have two options for this, easy and complete. I'm going to show you both of these so you know it's possible, but I think it's fair to say you'll want to stick with the easy option unless you have some very specific needs. Now, important note, These haptic effects only work on iPhones, actual physical iPhones. Your Mac will not vibrate, your iPad won't vibrate. It requires an actual physical iPhone. Otherwise, these effects will do nothing at all. They're silently ignored. Anyway, we'll start with the easy option here. Like sheets and alerts, we tell SwiftUI when to trigger our haptic effect, and it takes care of the rest for us. First, we can write a simple view that will add 1 to a counter whenever a button's pressed. I'll say at state, private var, counter is 0. And then in the body, I'm going to write button, tap count is that counter, and then we'll add 1 to counter whenever it's pressed. So unsurprisingly, that'll build nicely. Let's see a little preview. I can press plus here and it'll add. Nothing surprising here. That's all old code. To make it more interesting, we're going to add a haptic effect to this button that triggers whenever it's pressed. This is with a modifier called sensory feedback. And I'll say my feedback will be dot increase, with the trigger being that counter property. Now, if you want to, pause the video now, try playing back in a real device. Again, not simulator.
Так, еще раз создаем переменную состояние, counter, которая является счетчиком, а также является триггером для sensory feedback.
A real device here, you should feel gentle taps when you press on that button. Now, this sensory feedback here, dot increase, is one of the built-in haptic feedback variants. It's great when you're increasing a value like we have here, a counter, and there are lots of others to choose from. Just press dot and explore them more. You'll see important ones like success is down here. We have warning, we have error, we have start and stop, and there's more. And each of these built-in feedback variants has a different feel to them. And you're going to find it's tempting to basically go through them all and pick the ones you...
Еще раз. Маленько вернемся назад.
You're going to find it's tempting to basically go through them all and pick the ones you like the feel of. Oh, this one feels great here. I'll use that one here because it feels good. Please stop and think how this will be confusing for folks who are blind, for example, who rely on haptics to convey extra information to them, extra context to them. If your app hits an error, but you play the success haptic because you like the feel of it, it might cause confusion in practice. So be careful. So that's built-in haptics. Very, very nice, very, very easy. If you want more control of built-in haptics, there are some options down here called impact. And this has a couple of variants. If I pull this out slightly more, you can see the size of this thing. You can see we have flexibility here and intensity, but also weight and intensity. There are options for that too. So it's customizable where you can choose exactly what we want to say. So we can say, for example, I want to have, let's do an impact with flexibility and intensity. I'm going to say, imagine we have a sort of soft objects colliding at medium intensity, like that. So you get a dull sort of soft thud feeling. Or I want let's say the weight variant, impact weight, and that didn't work. Impact with weight. There we go. Heavy objects hitting themselves hard, maximum intensity like that. Experiment and get a feel for what it's like, because there are variations between there, and you will think, oh, that is quite a soft object or similar. It's actually quite subtle. Anyway, that's the easy option. For more advanced options, Apple provides with a whole framework called Core Haptics, and this thing, I think, really feels like a labor of love from the team behind it. It was one of the really hidden gems when Apple announced iOS 13, and I completely pounced on it when I saw release notes because I was obsessed with it first because it's so much fun. Because Core Haptics lets us create hugely customizable haptics from scratch, combining tap effects and vibrations and parameter curves and so much more. I don't want to go into too much depth here because I could just go way off topic and rant here. It's so much fun. But I do at least want to give you an example of the power of what it can do so you can try it for yourself another time. First things first, add an import for core haptics. It's a separate framework. There we go. And next, we want to add an instance of CH haptic engine as a property. And that's the thing that's responsible for making vibrations that we've designed. So we'll make this thing up front before we actually want our haptic effects to play back. And so I'll say we have at state private var, our engine is a CH haptic engine ? Now we're going to make this thing as soon as our main view appears, and that's obviously crashing my preview for some reason. Thank you very much for that, Apple. We're going to make this thing as soon as our view appears, and when you do that, you can attach handlers to it so it'll resume if it gets stopped, for example. Right, if the app moves to the background, it'll get killed automatically or paused automatically. You can resume it when it comes back to the foreground again. We're keeping it simple here. And so if we can have haptics, we just start it straight away and put an error if it fails. So simple. We'll do a method down here called prepare haptics. Inside here, I'll say guard ch haptic engine dot capabilities for hardware dot supports haptics. If we support haptics, carry on. If we don't, just exit. There's no point continuing the point.
Так, секундочку, что он здесь делает? Создает функцию prepare haptic, где делает guard ch, это значит core haptics, haptic engine. Capabilities for hardware, support haptic else. Return.
Point trying to play this, it's not going to work here. We will say our do block, make our engine be a new ch haptics engine, and then try starting the engine like that. If that fails, we'll catch the error and just do print there was an error creating the engine, and let's print out the localized description like so.
Так, еще раз. Так, то есть мы здесь запускаем движок сенсорного фидбэка.
Now for the fun part. We can configure parameters to control how strong the haptics should be, which is a haptic intensity, and also how sharp the object can be. That's down to the rigid and soft objects again. And then put those into a single haptic event with a relative time offset. Sharpness, I don't know how to say really. It's an odd term. You think, what's a sharp haptic? But it'll make sense once you've tried it. Please try noodling around here, experiment. It's so much fun. A sharpness value of 0 really does feel dull compared to a sharpness value of 1. So give them both a try and see what you think. As for relative time, this lets us create lots of haptic events in a single sequence, all strung together, all playing back accurately. So we're going to add a method down here to content view called complex success. You saw on the old, sensory feedback success, that's fine. It's now complex success playback here. So again, we're going to make sure our device supports haptic straight away, otherwise bail out. If we're still here, we'll go ahead and make an array of events, which is an array of ch haptic event. This will start out making one intense sharp tap. So I'll say our intensity is a ch haptic event parameter. The ID is .haptic intensity and value is 1. So 1 for intensity. And then our sharpness is another ch haptic event parameter. Per event, typo there, event parameter. There we go. This time for haptic sharpness. Again, value 1. So strong and sharp together. Those are two parameters. I'll put those both into a new event object, ch haptic event. This has the event type of .haptic transient. That means a one-off tap as opposed to a continuous sort of buzz. For parameters, I'm going to say it's an array of our intensity and our sharpness, and our time is 0. And we'll add that to our events array.
Так, здесь мы настраиваем наш двигатель через то, что задаем разные параметры. Интенсивность, острота, события и так далее. Event. Так. Интенсивность, sharpness, резкость, может быть. Event type, haptic, transient параметры, intensity, sharpness и что еще? Все ничего. Интервал времени 0. После этого пишем events. Append event. Здесь мы его настроили, тут мы его передаем в массив. Нам не нравятся ему вот эти строчки.
Like so. That is our play. Give me one intensity, one sharpness now, effectively saying at the same time. So I'll say, go ahead and do a do block, convert these things into a pattern so we can actually play back and just play the pattern immediately. So I'll say make a pattern, which is try ch haptic pattern, the events of that array of one event right now, and no extra parameters. Like that. Then make a player to play back that pattern. Make player with the pattern. And then try player.start at time 0. And if that fails again, we'll just do print failed to play.
Так, еще раз, теперь он в do catch блоке делает, создает паттерн sech haptic, паттерн events, параметры, никаких параметров дополнительных нет. Let player. Так, опечатка. Pattern player. Pattern. Player try. Engine make player with pattern. Try player. At time 0. Catch.
Play pattern with error.localized description, like so. So your events could have many, many, many things happening. Do this, then this, then this, then this at various times. You combine all those events to a single pattern. Here's my exact sequence of events. Make a player for that and play it back when you're ready. To try it out, we can go ahead and use our button for that. We'll say, let's do button play haptic. You can scrap counter now. And then when that's pressed, I'll just go ahead and say call our, what's it called? Complex success. Like that. Run it now. If you want to, of course, you could use the action value here instead. I could do action is complex success. Same thing, really. One thing you do have to do, though, that of course triggers playback of our pattern. But you do have to tell SwiftUI when our view is shown, perform. Don't do that to me, Xcode. Perform loading that, so prepare haptics when our view has been shown. That matters. You must create the haptic engine, you must start the haptic engine before you attempt to trigger any haptics here. So, once we have that, again, give it a try. Please, please, please give it a try. Noodle around with these values 1 and 1. Try less intense, still full sharp, or very intense, low sharpness, noodle around, maybe add more than one event with different times and so forth. For example, we could say, yes, we could obviously modify these things here, but we could make multiple events happening here. We could, for example, say, actually, I want to make a bunch of increasing events, getting stronger and sharper, and then decrease again, down again. So go all the way up and all the way down again, for example, also works. I might say, for example, here, before let intensity, I'll say for I in stride from 0 to 1 by 0.1, and then put that whole chunk of code inside there. So now we're saying count from 0 to 1, going 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, all the way up to 1, like that, and do these things each time. And I'm going to tell this thing, actually, we want to use I as our value each time. So I put I here and I here. So I'll use 0.1, 0.2, 0.33, 0.4, all the way up to the thing. Now I'm going to make a slight change here. See, it's complaining that double and float aren't compatible. Fine. You've got to say float I for reasons known only to Apple. But yeah, float I like that to convert our double to a float. But what you want to do also is tell this thing, don't do it all at relative time 0, do it relative time I. So play the first one at 0, then 0.1 for the second one, 0.2 for the third one, 0.3 for the fourth one. So it'll go brrr, like that, getting stronger and sharper as it goes. And if you want to, take all that here and again count from 0 to 0.1 by 0.1, but this time we're going to say the value will be 1 minus that thing and 1 minus that thing. So it starts very strong and very sharp, and goes down to being very weak and very dull, and add 1 to the relative time. So it completes after this initial loop. So it'll go from very, very gentle and very, very dull up to very, very strong. Then very, very strong, down being very, very gentle and very, very dull again. And that adds them all to the single pattern. The single events array here makes one pattern from it, it plays it back as normal, which is with different times happening throughout. So it all feels like a whole bunch of taps happening on the screen. Anyway, core haptics is just great fun to experiment with. It really is a lot of fun. But given how much work it takes to produce this kind of exact thing you want to proceed, I think it's likely you'll stick with the built-in effects, all those sensory feedback things, at least at first, and probably as much as possible as well, because it's just so much easier. That brings us to the end of the overview for this project. So please press and hold, undo a billion times, get back to your starting template, like almost like that. Boom. It's now time to build the main project.
Не понял, у нас же еще есть один. Ага, taking basic orders, details. Сейчас посмотрим. Вот это уже, наверное, то, что было. Этот день был 50. Да, вот это уже то, что было. То есть 2 новых видео вышло. Видео про Codable conformance to Observable class и добавление haptic effects. Это уже было. Даже если мы посмотрим на YouTube.
Great.
Но хотя нет, год назад. Свежее видео как будто.
The first step in this project was to
Старое.
make an ordering
Как
screen
будто.
that takes the basic details of an order. How many cupcakes they want,
Неважно.
what kind of cupcakes they want, and if they have any special customizations. Now, before we get into the UI, we're going to start by defining our data model. Previously, we were mixing structs and classes to get the right result, but here we'll have a different solution. We'll have a single class that stores all our data, and it passed from screen to screen in our project. This means all the screens in our app share the same data, which will work really well, as you'll see. For now, this class won't need that many properties. We're going to have a type of cakes plus a static array of all possible options. We'll have how many cakes the user wants to order. We'll have whether you want to make special requests, which will show or hide extra options in our UI. We'll have, do they want to have extra frosting on their cakes? And if they want to have extra sprinkles on their cakes. You know, some extra things they can customize based on their desire for the cupcakes. Each of these have to update the UI when they're changed, so we've got to make sure this whole class uses the observable macro. So, make a new Swift file, press Command N, choose Swift file, and call this thing order.swift. And then we'll say inside here there is an observable class called order. And inside there, first we'll have our various types of cupcake. I'll say static let types be an array of vanilla and strawberry and chocolate and rainbow. Then we'll have the storage for the current order. We'll say type is 0 by default, so vanilla. Then quantity, that'll be 3 by default, sensible default there, I think. Then var special request enabled is false. And then we'll do extra frosting. Frosting is false. And then add sprinkles is false. And we can now make a basic instance of that in our content view that will store all the active order. So we're in content view. I'm going to say here, at state, private var order is a new order instance. And that's the only place this order will be created. Every other screen in the app will be passed to this property, so they all work the same data, all sharing the same information behind the scenes. Now I'm going to start building out the data, the UI for the screen, in 3 sections, with a cupcake type and quantity coming first. Now this will have a little picker showing users the options of vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, and rainbow, and then a stepper with a range 3 through 20 to choose an amount, and all that wrapped out of form with a navigation stack so we can set a title. So that all sounds easy, but there's a small speed bump. I have deliberately here made our cupcake topping list an array of strings. I'm storing the actual selection as an integer, 0. And it's intentional to try and show you more variety here. We'll try and match the two somehow. And one solution is to use the indices property of an array, which gives the position of each item inside there that we can use as an array index. This is a bad idea for mutable arrays because the order of array can change at any time. But here, the array is constant. It won't ever change, so it's quite safe. So, back in our content view, I'm going to say we have, in our body, a navigation stack with a form inside, and then our first section, with a section with a picker, select your cake type, with selection bound to $order.type. Now, inside the picker, that's where our for each comes. I'm going to do a for each of our order, capital O, .types.indices. Loop over all the indices, 0, 1, 2, 3 in our case. And then inside there, make a text of the order.types at that index. So 0, 1, 2, and 3. And you can see already, boom, this pops up nicely like that. Now you can see it saying, wait a minute, you've got a non-constant integer range here. SwiftUI is worried. It's worried this might change over time. Now we know it's constant. SwiftUI does not. And so it's saying to us, this looks like it might change. Be careful what you want to do. And the solution is just to say, use the ID of \self to promise that there's safe IDs to use. And that will clear the warning up nicely. After the picker is our stepper. We'll say number of cakes. and write our order quantity here. And the value for that we bound to $order.quantity in the range, like I said, of 3 through 20. Enough cupcakes for anyone, surely. And finally, add a title to our form here. Navigation title of Cupcake Corner. Okay, looking nice already. The second section of our form will hold 3 toggle switches bound to special request enabled, extra frosting, and add sprinkles respectively. However, the second and third of those, extra frosting, add sprinkles, should only be visible when the first one, the special request option, is enabled. We'll wrap those in a condition. So we'll say there's a second section here with a toggle inside saying any special requests, like that. Is on is bound to $order special request enabled .animation to animate the change smoothly if possible. And now inside there I'll say if our order does have special request enabled, then we'll do a toggle for add extra frosting for our, I can't spell frosting for some reason, frosting is on bound to $order extra frosting. And then below that will be toggle add extra sprinkles with is on bound to $order add sprinkles. And I'm going to go ahead and try it out. Press just Command R and run the app back, see what you think. All being well, you can see I have just vanilla here nicely. Where's the rest of my form? Nothing at all. Cool. It seems to have lost the plot slightly. Try again. Press Command R again. No, I get one option. Cool. Why do I get one option? SwiftUI. Let's find out. I'll just delete the app, just in case SwiftUI is playing around. Let's find out. Remove the app. Delete the app. Yeah, delete the app. Go on. It's fine in the preview. But nope, the main app only has one option available to me, and the preview has all of them. Cool. Let's remove this condition just in case it's lost the plot slightly. Now they all appear, and now condition again. What's it going to do? Now it works great. Sometimes Xcode and the simulator can be a little bit interesting, folks, but don't worry. There's no problem. It's just a weird glitch in the system for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. Relax. You've seen how it's fixed. Just noodle around till it finally figures itself out. Anyway, as you can see, it should work correctly eventually. I can choose my cupcake type, strawberry, whatever, rainbow. Choose lots of cakes. I'm a very, very portly gentleman. And when I enable this box, these things slide in. Now, they're not animating, which is not ideal. That's SwiftUI being a bit poor, I think. It should animate, really. It is not. There you go. But it is at least working correctly, so I can go through and enable and disable these things nicely. However, there is a bug, and this is an actual bug of ours, not a SwiftUI bug for a change. And it's one of our making, more importantly. If we do what I just did there, we enabled special requests, then enabled frosting and sprinkles, then disabled special requests. Now, what's happened behind the scenes is our 2 special request booleans are still set to true, which is why if I re-enable the checkbox, boom, they come to being true straight away. Now, this kind of problem isn't hard to work around if all the various layers of your code knows about this. If your server, your database, your app editor are all programmed, ignore extra frosting, ignore extra sprinkles if special request is false, then you're fine. However, a better idea, certainly a safer idea, is to say, actually, when we disable special requests, also automatically disable these 2 here. Reset them back to default values. We can do that in our class over here. We can add a property observer to special request enabled here. We can say that when it's changed with didSet, we're going to say if the value is now false, then extra frosting is false and add sprinkles is false, like that. I'll press Command R, wondering if it'll run the new version, the old version. Let's find out. I'll enable the box, and enable that, and then disable this, and re-enable it. Okay, so it's sort of having a go. Didn't look great. Maybe that's it trying to animate the change, perhaps. Maybe animation is getting actually a worse result than not trying to animate changes. Let's try again with animation turned off. Again, enable, disable, enable. Oh no, it's just not great. This is a great video, folks, for battling with SwiftUI. Anyway, that's the first 2 sections done with some live debugging along the way. Our third section is the easiest because this is going to be just a navigation link pointing to the next screen in our flow. Now, we haven't got a second screen just yet, but we can add it quickly just to do a little placeholder. Press Command N on your keyboard, choose SwiftUI View, and call this thing Address View, like that. I want to give this thing an order property, so it has an object can watch with data inside. So I'll say if our order is an order like that. And then in its body, we've got hello world. Honestly, that's perfectly fine for now. We don't need anything good in there. You need to pass a value in here, though. So I'd say order is just an empty order for previewing purposes. We're going to make that more useful shortly, but for now, it means we can return back to our content view and then add the final section to our form, which is simply a navigation link pointing to that address view, passing in the current order. We can modify it from there. And so we'll add one last section here. We'll set a section with a navigation link inside that makes an address view with our current order being passed in. And actually, I'll add here the label directly. We'll just say delivery details like that, make it a nice link button in our first screen. Press Command R, see if it works this time. It does. I can browse through, add test requests, yada, 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 and then press this button here, go to the next screen here. So at this point, we have the ability to create our order. Next on, we're going to fill our address. And then add the final section to our form, which we'll say the section, current order being delivery. We're going to make battling with our third command. What we have the ability to create our order.
У меня, в принципе, все это уже есть. Здесь что-то поломалось. Тут, скорее всего, нужно будет написать add binding. Ну, тогда вот здесь какие-то... Пробуем так. И здесь в section он почему-то не хочет. Details. Так, и теперь еще последнее. Так, как-то так. Окей, на данный момент я фиксирую данную информацию. Что у нас получается? День 50 завершен, да? Тогда идем в threads. Так, не туда пишу. Не ту клавиатуру взял, не туда пишу. И у меня есть такой тред, где я пишу все по этому курсу. День 45. День 46. День 40. Сорок 49. Так, напишу, что здесь было нового. Нового было вот это и вот это. Опубликовать. И также еще XCOM. Хочу найти, где я здесь сделал день 50. Семьдесят один, 67, 9, 50. halfway done. Так, посмотрел. Получается, день 40, день 50 закончен. Это есть, это есть. Можно закрывать это и закрывать это. Кстати, по планам на февраль. Обновились у меня планы на февраль. Были у меня планы на январь. И немножечко поменялись они, подредактировались. Значит, первый не изменился. Это закончить курс по SwiftUI. Второе, закончить и публиковать приложение по кофе, про кофе. Второе, это сделать видео для YouTube-канала на use-тематику. У меня уже есть идея. Закончить основы JavaScript, но это другая часть моей активности сейчас. И также уже вот эти дополнительные две цели, надо было бы ее перенести ниже. Это выпустить обновление для уже опубликованного приложения и докупить или обновить оборудование. Значит, я писал здесь в тредсах, почему планы на январь не все получилось сделать. В основном это потому, что в мою жизнь вошел JavaScript, и мне пришлось уделять много времени ему. Вот. Но ничего страшного. Вот потихонечку осваиваю и, точнее, закрываю и свой гештальт по курсу 100 дней SwiftUI. Так. День 50 закончен. Завершен, точнее. Следующий день — это день 51. Но сейчас я его уже делать не буду, потому что мне нужно бежать. Вот. Но завтра у нас какой день? Завтра у нас пятница. Пятница завтра. Я вас с этим, кстати, поздравляю. Значит, если все по плану, я не знаю еще, какое завтра будет у меня расписание, но если будет возможность, то я также выйду в эфир про SwiftUI днем, и ближе уже к вечеру, к ночи будет эфир по JavaScript. Вот, а на сейчас это все. Спасибо всем за внимание, за присутствие. Если не подписаны, подписывайтесь на Twitch, на YouTube, на Threads, на другие соцсети, которые найдете по ссылке из чата. Ставьте там лайки, все такое. Это поможет продвижению контента и вообще придает сил тому, чтобы делать вещи. Вот на сейчас все. Спасибо, что были с нами. Со мной. Мы Николай II. И увидимся с вами в следующий раз. Пока.